Article 296 to our leaders, because sometimes they forget that the Constitution insists that they should act in the performance of their discretionary powers in a fair, candid, and reasonable manner. Those words, they hold true meaning. They are reasonable words. It expresses that you will not be capricious and arbitrary in your decision making. That's the expectation we have of not only the judiciary, but also the occupant of that seat we are seeing on the TV now. The Speaker of Parliament is a very powerful person. We do not expect him to put partisanship ahead of the collective interest of the people of this country. And that will be betraying our cause. Because again, the idea of public service is that people put their personal interest first. That is a form of sacrifice. It's difficult to put your personal interest aside. Even if Speaker Bagbin is going to lose the next speakership, he should be interested in the legacy he's leaving. He should be interested in what his children and grandchildren and their progeny will read about him.
And I'll come back to you, Raymond, for that point you were making just on the legacy the speaker is leaving. But let's take you to Parliament. In fact, my colleague Benjamin Akpakpo is outside Parliament. He's just monitoring the situation. Earlier, we brought you visuals of some supporters of the NPP bussed to the precinct of Parliament. Benjamin, what can you report?
Well, Faustina, indeed, I am here. It's the makeshift parliament, if you want. This is actually the premises of the Accra International Conference Center, where today's session will take place. The Speaker of Parliament, just about 10 minutes ago, arrived here. He's going to use the rear entrance to get in, but that is the entrance. You can see Madam Tete, Honorable Tete, for example, getting ready to go through the scanning machine and get in. And some of the members of Parliament are in there. Initially, some of the members of the NPP walked away, citing the fact that they were awaiting the arrival of the speaker to know what the way forward would be. Some members of the NDC remained in there. Some of them came out to have some refreshment, but by and large, most of them are seated now. The speaker will soon take his seat, and then we'll find out how things go. So for now, in that chamber with the tight security and everything that you see there, that is what is happening. And soon the speaker will start the session, will commence this session in Parliament. And when I say Parliament today, the chamber is on the precincts of the Accra International Conference Center.
Benjamin, clarify for me, the NPP supporters, are they still in Parliament?
Well, as far as looking around is concerned, I do not see any of them here. Initially, when I went to park around Parliament proper, right across the street, I saw a few pockets of people there. There was a heavy military presence, there was a heavy police presence, but none of these members of the NPP clad in party attire and wielding party paraphernalia that we saw earlier in the morning. No sign of them as of now. I am not sure where exactly they have gone, but they are definitely not here at the Accra International Conference Center.
Thank you, Benjamin. We'll come back to you for updates on what's actually happening. And also, we'll put on your screen shortly live visuals from Parliament, just so you can get a sense of what is happening. We told you that the MPs, they've taken their seats in the original position. Earlier, Afenyo Markin, the leader of the NPP caucus in Parliament, addressed a press conference. He said that their side decided to leave the House to the offices as they await the Speaker to do, quote, the right thing. What is the right thing now that the Speaker has also filed another suit in court, hoping to stay the execution of the Supreme Court's ruling? Raymond, I'm back to you in the studio. You were just making the point about this whole power tussle.
Yes, I'm saying the ultimate engagement on this, and I mean, see, I agree that there will be disagreements. The entire conception of state would have it that in constitutionalism, there's the expectation that you have limited powers, and that limited powers ought to be checked by another institution in a way that you cannot abuse that. I am expecting the Speaker to walk in mindful of the fact that he's making history and that he will be judged fairly or poorly depending on what he says and what he does in this seat. Will Speaker Bagbin be swayed more by partisan, personal, parochial interest, or he will be swayed by the ultimate interest of the Republic? we'll be very lucky if the two coincide and are one in this particular case. So we should be interested in hearing whether or not Speaker is more concerned about his legacy. The man who fostered and built and developed Ghana's democracy, even to his personal detriment, or against his interest and that of his political followers, or his political party, or political thinking. As against he making sure that he protects a future job, or protects some form of alliance and allegiance that he's supposed to owe to the team. Because the allegiance is first and foremost to the people who gave him the job. That is we, the people of this country. In fact, sovereignty lies with the people. We, the people, we have given him a job to do. The expectation is that he will deliver that according to the standards expected of him. And he's a man who has advanced in age. Mostly, I think of such people as being more conscious of their legacy more than any other grouping in this particular case. Would he let that be represented in his action today? And if he does so, his name will be etched in gold in our history as the man who put the interest of the nation ahead of personal, parochial, or any other interest that may supersede, even when he is likely to incur the wrath of his own people. And this is not the first time he would have done so anyway. Speaker Bagbin has, on some occasions, delivered judgments that really went against his own people in ways that they didn't like one bit. And again, he insisted it was for the collective interest of this republic. We are hoping that not only he will do that, the judiciary will take a cue from that. What they will do in that case is repairing the collective image of politics in Ghana. They are not just, you see, and I said it earlier, people are losing hope in this concept that we call democracy. The evidence is in the Afrobarometer. Of course, it's not only happening in Ghana. It's happening in other African countries. But the commonalities are there. Poor governance is at the core of it. So if you do not show signs that you are evolving in your governance space, people will leave you behind. They will lose hope in it. They will think and even conceive the options of other alternatives on the table. Again, for an institution like the judiciary, which is in the top bottom of trust, this is a perfect time for you to regain that. And if all of these people were minded, we will not be sitting here today, in all fairness. If every state actor was mindful of that constitutional dictate, fair, candid, and reasonable,
let me bring in Evans Spencer at this point. We're all looking at what would be in best interest of the people and the country as we're looking forward to the Speaker's verdict. Let's go back in the annals of history. This is not the first time where we're having issues with who exactly is majority with the NDC and the MPP side.
I mean, we had that shortly after the elections in 2020, when we had this hung parliament of 137, and then we had the independent candidate. We had that too at the time. For the very first, if you remember, they went to the House, and everybody was not sure where to sit, and that lingered for about 2 weeks. Even for journalists, we couldn't describe them. The same thing that we had with Afenyo attacking us and saying that when you call the when you call Haruna Idrisu at the time the minority leader, he says it's not minority leader, and so we just resorted to saying NDC group, and that's the first time we started calling them NDC group, and of course it's now. So we've had this before. The reasons then were obvious. In the Fourth Republic, obviously, we've not had that even numbers in the House. With one split right to the middle, with one independent candidate. So it was understandable. We were all in uncharted territory at the time, and it was resolved. I believe the speaker gave...
No, by the same speaker.
Same speaker.
He gave a ruling that sort of clarified the matter, and we went on. The NDC side were very unhappy with him at the time, but it clarified the matter. We've come back to the point where, again, we await his decision on this with one split right to the middle with one independent candidate. So it was understandable. We were all in uncharted territory at the time, and the parliamentary correspondent had clarified to us, which is that he's asked his lawyer to go to the Supreme Court to file to stay its own injunction. And then the point that he won't sit until that has been filed. He could have simply come and said, I have instructed that. Whilst I'm waiting for this, I respect the Supreme Court, I disagree with it, but I'll wait for this outcome, which is what lawyers say, and he's a lawyer, right? He could have come and said that. But if it's indeed a fact, and that he has said also that he's waiting for it to be filed before he comes in, it means one thing for me, which means he's coming to refer to the fact that he's begun a process in the Supreme Court, and now whilst the process is pending,
his initial ruling
stands until the determination of that particular matter also. That's what I'm predicting will happen. Now, that obviously, I mean, that is the law, by the way, but people disagree with that view. Whether a mere process to set aside an existing order of a court serves as an injunction is a highly contested subject in jurisprudence. There are two different sides of this, sometimes even three, right? But he's taking one side. Obviously, you can expect that the minority side, the MPP's group, will take the other side. But at least,
Hold on, no. You remember when Afenyomarke filed his case at the courts?
That argument was made too.
Yes, it became one of the contentions that, and I thought we had moved beyond that.
Yeah.
But people actually picked other situations out and said, listen, let's distinguish it. This is Parliament. If every filing of an individual in court prevents Parliament from carrying out its duty, Parliament will never get any work done. Then they advance it in those lines, almost convincing some other people that the applicability can be varied depending on the conditions here. You can be rest assured. If the speaker makes the argument, they are going to say the opposite of it.
Of course.
No. We still got to do our work. The original position
but at least it leaves us in a better position than if he had not filed this and come to this to sit in the chair and say, I disrespect. Not disrespect, but
I'm disregarding.
You know, but again, he would have still, reading his initial judgment, used the same constitution, the standing orders, the Parliament Act to make his case.
That's true.
He would have simply said, and if you read his initial judgment, he makes the point that the Supreme Court interprets the constitution. He is applying it. He makes that distinction. And he would have said, I still, and today if you listen to Tony Edu, Tony Edu makes the point to you both that the speaker was simply applying the law, and the subject of interpretation was
there was no need for the
interpretation. Was invented.
He has talked about no need because the English is very clear, but that's his view.
but that if you read the ruling of the speaker, that's the speaker's position.
But that's the reason.
So he could have come today and said, well,
Evans, what is the?
But do you know the interest?
What's the reason for? I mean, for you resorting to a court? Because I disagree. I say this is my understanding. That's your understanding.
Even agreeing on whether this is an application or an interpretation ought to be determined by a court if there is a dispute over it. I hope you get the point. So if you support speaker and say you are merely applying, and I think he had veered into that area, we ought to submit ourselves to a body that is qualified in determining whether or not the speaker merely applied or interpreted that. I don't know if you get the point.
There are things which are very clear. For instance, when it comes to Article 108, that says in the view of the one presiding. See, it says in the view. So if the speaker sits on a certain case, for instance, when it comes to a bill which will impose the charge on the consolidated fund, it says in the view of the one presiding. That is there. Well, but if you also disagree, you can go to the court, go and challenge it. That's the whole idea. So people can go to court. You know, there are certain things that we can argue and argue and argue at the end of the day when it comes to the interpretation. You may think that it is very clear. Somebody might say that is not the case. So because of that, he's putting it to test. But he can get fined as a result for wasting the court's time.
This is not the first time that there have been tension between the courts and Parliament.
True.
There was a High Court case, I remember very well, on the subject of serving a certain member of Parliament, where he was very clear that the court, he will not
entertain from the court.
The court. And I remember the judge then, because he disregarded the first court, direction that was given.
That's true.
And the lawyers went to court and complained. The judge then also used some very strong. I'll recall that case, and that eventually was resolved, right? And I think he gave a ruling that says that you can only serve us on a Monday, I believe. And yesterday it was when I was speaking to the majority side, they actually referenced that. So this is not the first time this tension had played out. The speakers.
You're speaking to which side?
Again,
Evans, this is the thing about. You see, this is the thing about.
So I guess the point I'm making with that is that the speaker's his own history on the subject, where the courts come to play in the affairs of Parliament, is very clear. He believes clearly that the courts should not be interfering in the work of Parliament. I think that's where he stands ideologically
in fact,
on the subject.
He jealously guards,
yes.
and he says so,
yes.
that he will jealously guard
yes.
that role that Parliament has to play and will not be the weak link.
And that is also what fortifies my prediction.
Okay, of the stance he's taking.
Because you need to look at, if you take him as a judge, you need to, and lawyers go before judges, and you have to study the judge's ruling over a period. You can safely predict on subjects of ideology and etc. where they may land in the subject. Yeah. His position consistently when the courts had come intersect with the legislature has been, you can't come to Parliament and dictate to us what we do. His position has always been consistent on the subject. And if you read his recent ruling,
remember even the anti-LGBTQ
matter,
and the
ruling.
Yes,
that was same.
Then he kept on insisting that if you cross this line, you are interfering with the work of Parliament.
But of course, that's also when he said he has just been chosen as a seat at the Supreme Court. Yeah, so he cannot approve.
I remember when he used that, and see, almost like tongue in cheek at the time.
And it is exactly what he's going to do today, or may do today. I don't want to even predict what he's going to do. I'm just waiting patiently. But what I would say, and I've always maintained, is that look, whatever happens, there are certain things that could have best been solved even amongst members of Parliament. I've had conversations about, whether, and the NPP had, unlike in 2020, where they had 169 members, and so they could write dismissing persons and writing to the Speaker to declare his seat vacant. This time around, you've heard the party has been very silent. They've not, dismissed the members of Parliament who had declared their intention to contest as independent candidates, even though the party's constitution is very clear on forfeiting your membership, because they know this could actually come up. But then we've had conversations. When Professor Michael Quay, for instance, says that, that's if the party comes in, then that's the point, because the party then wrote to him. But if that was the case, then this is a very justified ruling, because that person himself, by his action, has left the party. Yeah, if that was the case, that these persons, by their own actions, have left the party. Okay, so you can declare their seats vacant, because the moment you decide to go against...
Remember even the Chairman-Team period?
Yeah.
They say, immediately you even express your interest to go out and go and be...
Chairman-Team himself said, don't expect any letter, because...
I'm gone.
Yeah, but they wrote to the others to tell them that to remind them that you are actually... You're automatically out.
Okay.
But now, you can see, because of the difficulty, that's why I say that, you see...
In fact, because also of the formula difficulty.
Yes, the difficulty and the precedent that was set by Professor Michael Quay, and which at the time inured to the benefit of the NPP, which they didn't need. You see, because they had 169 members in Parliament.
It was an emotional decision.
He has even come out to say that the Speaker, in its current ruling, committed an illegality, because the 4 members of Parliament in question ought to be given an opportunity for a fair hearing.
He had always believed that Michael Quay was wrong. So for him, saying the Speaker is wrong, yes, to be giving a fair hearing, the Speaker says that's his understanding of the Constitution, of the law, of the standing orders of Parliament.
But in all fairness, why is sometimes when these expressions are used, why is the fair hearing here?
Yeah.
The man is determining fact. Fact is, have you filed, is there notice of poll that suggests that a vice minister filed on this day?
There is.
If there is, why do I need to ask the vice minister whether he's the one, or he has filed, or he intends staying? Some of these things, I don't get how we seek to bring in concepts almost as if
it's all about the technicalities and everything.
Oh yes, throwing in a lot of this, so that it sounds confusing.
At this point in time, the
Shalom
NPP
everyone, my name is Eris Soref, I'm the president of One for Israel. I'm sure many of you have seen news.
I believe Speaker Bagbing is wrong. But whatever happens, Speaker Bagbing is in a position today
you are the Supreme Court allowing that
whether or not, now that he's taking processes to file, he would come again and says, this is his understanding that because of this is it or that is it. Let us wait. But in the end, for me, in the end, these members of Parliament, in the end, what they must be concerned about the most, the 2 main political parties, is, and so what?
There is something that is happening in our politics that I've observed as a very problematic trend. Lack of principle.
Yeah.
The way people can change positions without further evidence and anything aggravating that, merely because times have changed, is troubling for me. It should worry you. And it's not out of an evolved thinking. It should worry you that yesterday you believed this. And today, just because it suits your political thinking, you can stay out of the conversation, but can switch easily. And they don't even offer any prudent explanation for it. It's so wobbly that you ask yourself, what is the principle this one operating with? Because if, Wednesday, my position is that this is how this should be done, no difficulty. Under any circumstance, that is how we get to know how US judges will vote. You get our point? Because throughout the 20 or so years the person has been sitting there, very consistent with principle. But there are people today, I like what they call it, fufu. Tomorrow, without anything changing, he has not heard of fufu before. He even goes ahead to say very terrible things about fufu and everything connected to that. Do you get my point? That is a problem. Secondly, there is something that Professor Ross, for example, teaches first year political science students. The principles are 1, compromise, consensus building, and collaboration. Winston, I think that is leaving our politics. The people can no longer make some very sit down, like we are sitting here, make concessions for the collective good of this state. They take way too entrenched positions, not out of principle, but out of partisan considerations, that you forget who the ultimate beneficiary of the policy is supposed to be. So, are we saying that all these 275 members there, including Speaker and their leaders, couldn't have sat in a room to resolve this matter without making all of us agents of this conversation?
Yesterday you spoke with Habib Idris, and he served notice.
On this point. So yesterday, there were attempts to get both sides to sit in the room and talk.
Exactly.
At the very highest level in this country, eminent Ghanaians, both home and abroad, tried to mediate. I know because an eminent Ghanaian reached out, they're looking for contacts of other eminent Ghanaians, and I was asking why, and he explained to me that they're putting together this coalition. And this is a very, very serious level. They actually attempted to get the Speaker involved, and this was not just minority majority, but also Speaker and Chief Justice, right? Try to get them to talk, the two arms, in fact, including the President, right? Everybody. So minority majority leadership, the President, Speaker, the Chief Justice, everybody sitting down to talk. Now, then in the evening, I spoke to the Deputy Majority Whip, who was clear that because of the entrenched positions on both sides, they have no money to talk. And so we got into today with nobody talking to each other. It's the reason why we...
No concessions even made.
No
what kind of politics?
It's the reason why you saw what played out this morning, where both sides were eager to get into the chamber first so that they can take the seat on the majority side. Because they could not talk the day before, when everybody had tried to try and get people to sit and have a conversation. And so where we are now, I don't really see that changing. I don't see that changing. And if my fears are confirmed, as in what the Speaker may do later today, this is going to, for the rest of the day and again, then once the Speaker does that, it comes back to the Supreme Court, right? But the Supreme Court will have to, have to then decide whether to grant the Speaker's application or not. You see, and you make the point, I want to return to that. By the time we are done with this back and forth, I think the biggest losers in all this is our democracy, but it is the judiciary. Our last line of defense that is being significantly diminished in terms of its respect that it has among everybody else. The if you like, the faith that people repose, and the CDD's Afrobarometer report says it. It is not necessarily because of its doing. It's just because this whole back and forth has placed them in a very impossible situation. Although I agree that the Supreme Court itself sometimes hasn't helped itself in the way it sort of considered some matters and haven't done for others. But by the time we are done, those who, and see, and remember, All this is happening in the context of an election which is just over 40 days away.
And I'll hold you to that. Let me go to Kasatintin now. He's in Parliament, just giving us an update of what exactly is happening. We told you earlier that the Speaker has arrived. Kweku, what's happening in the chamber?
Well, we expect that the Speaker, Alban Bagbeli, will pretty shortly walk in and gavel the House in session. Ultimately, that is what a lot of people are waiting for now. And as we wait for the Speaker of Parliament to walk in into the chamber, his convoy did arrive here about 10 minutes ago when the majority leadership had just left. And in fact, that will mean that pretty soon we expect that he will come in and gavel the House in session. And that will ultimately lead the House to start proceeding. And I just understand from one source within the majority, the NDC caucus leadership, that the reason why the Speaker of Parliament hasn't come in to start proceedings is because he's waiting for his lawyers to complete the filing of some processes he has mandated them to file at the Supreme Court. Between yesterday and now, we have been expecting lawyers for the Speaker of Parliament to file an action in court that is seeking to stay the hand of the Supreme Court. So after the Supreme Court says his declaration, he has also been seeking to stay sane using the same procedure that was used by election official Martin's application and ex parte application. And so we understand that is being worked on as we speak. And as soon as that is done, and the Speaker says that information, he will come in and then, of course, inform the House as to what the next steps are for Parliament of Ghana, whether or not he's going to order the NDC MPs who announced their numbers, because 100 of them having taken the seat in the majority side of the House, leaving the minority side, their usual sitting place for the last 3.5 years, completely empty. Then he will ask them to go back there, or he will help look over that and allow them to sit in the position they are sitting in there. 2 hours ago, in fact, less than that, we had from Alexander Martin, the leader of the NDC caucus in Parliament, who did indicate that the side did not want to stay on the floor because doing so might lead to violent confrontation, and they do not want to give the NDC MP what they have been looking for which reason he has asked all of them to leave and go back to their offices and wait for the Speaker to come. Following that, Kenneth Japan came in here, about 2 other entities also came, but they have also all since left, which has meant that the Chamber of Parliament is currently inhabited by just NDC MPs who are seated in the majority pews in Parliament, insisting that they are the true majority. They have seen scenes where they've been marching, singing patriotic songs, singing their party anthem, singing some revolutionary songs that have roots in their party. And so the eyes of the nation is currently on the Speaker of Parliament, whose security details about 10 minutes ago went around his chair, of course, to do their usual briefing to ensure that it's safe for him to come. And they are standing about 5 meters away from where I can see from his base and his chair, monitoring that with other security members of his, while the Speaker of Parliament is in there at the leadership lobby. The minority leader, or I should say the leader of the NDC, Dr. Kasatintin, is currently not on his seat. When the Speaker of Parliament walked into his lobby, he was asked to go there because normally they will have what is called the pre-sitting meeting. So a number of the leaders on the NDC side have joined him there. The NPP, we understand, are not there because Alexander Martin and his other leaders all went to the Justice and Room, then very far off from the dome where Parliament is sitting. So there's a pre-sitting meeting currently happening with the Speaker of Parliament and the leader of the NDC caucus, without the leaders of the NPP caucus present, because they have left the Justice. We do not know if an invitation has been extended to them and whether or not they are coming or they have joined it. That is information we can get confirmation for in the next few minutes or the next few hours. But the detail now is that, in fact, I'm just getting confirmation that Alexander Martin has come into that meeting. And so Alexander Martin, who is the leader of the NPP caucus in Parliament, is also in there currently with the Speaker of Parliament, with Kasatintin and other members of leadership on both sides of the House to try and get some understanding before he comes in. And usually, whatever happens on the floor of Parliament does not take each person or any MP by surprise, because they have what they call the pre-sitting meeting, where they agree on all these modalities. They agree that this is the position, we are not going to give in to this is what we are going to do, and then they come in and then come and sit, and then reenact all the issues, all the disagreements we've had in this pre-sitting meeting. So I can confirm that Alexander Afenimaki has come into this meeting with the Speaker of Parliament as well as the leader of the NDC caucus to try and get an understanding what exactly will happen when the Speaker of Parliament finally walks into the chamber and governs the House in session for 2 months.
Before I let you go, Kweku, I saw the former minority leader, Haruna Iddrisu, having a conversation with Kennedy Japan. There has been calls for both sides to negotiate behind closed doors. You've been doing some snooping around. Has there been any such meeting between the NPP caucus and the NDC caucus?
Well, speaking of the former minority leader, he seated right in front of me. I can just see him from where I'm standing. And he is in conversation with some members of the staff. What I can tell you is that there is no appetite within the backbenches on both sides for any compromise to take place. And at this point, leadership is what it will take. And that is the leadership on both sides of the aisle without to drop down their entrenched positions and perhaps carry their members along. Because if you look at the backbenches, they want to go all out. And this is from both the NDC and NPP side. All of them say their leaders should stay the course. They should acknowledge themselves as the majority in Parliament. They should not give in to any compromise. That will make a little bit of the leadership duties and the job of the leaders pretty difficult. Because when your backbenchers are riling, when your backbenchers are asking to take a certain course, they push you in a very difficult position to take another course. And so ultimately, that is why this meeting currently ongoing between the Speaker of Parliament and the leaders on both sides is crucial. Because ultimately, when they come back and they communicate to their members that this is what we have agreed on, their members may disagree, they may begrudge them, but normally they comply when it comes to matters like this. So ultimately, that is so crucial for the Speaker of Parliament and the leaders to be able to have an agreement. That means business of Parliament will at least be able to see. There are so many key businesses that the government side cannot afford to have them delayed. In fact, just this morning, we expect the government side to lay so many bills, including the free education bill and a number of other bills that they are expecting to put before the House. The more Parliament delays, the less time they have to deal with all this. Mind you, Parliament is expected to sit for 4 weeks, and they will again, sing go for election and come back on the midnight of the 7th of January 2025 to swear in the 9th Parliament. So there is not enough time for the House to do a number of business. And so if these disagreements are not ironed out quickly, the House sits and do business, that will mean a lot of government business will suffer. Mind you, there's also expected to be the vote of appropriation. That is the budget for the first quarter of next year. That must come either next week or next week, early November. That must come. And without this disagreement, this uncertainty, it makes it difficult for that process to come. And that will mean first quarter of next year, it could lead to a government shutdown literally. And we have heard just suggest among the NDC that the Speaker of Parliament should perhaps attend the House any day until the Supreme Court intends those matters that are currently before them. That will mean there will be no budget, the government cannot fund its operations in the first quarter of next year. So there's a lot of things at stake, and that is why that meeting that is currently ongoing in the Speaker's lobby with the Speaker of Parliament and the leaders of both sides is so crucial. Try and get some understanding for Gina.
Thank you, Kweku Asante. Let's come back in the studio, and I'm just come back to Evans Mensah. This whole back and forth in Parliament is clearly going to affect business in Parliament. We have 2 Supreme Court judges that are yet to be vetted and approved by Parliament. Other issues on the floor yet to be decided. The Speaker, as we await his ruling today, how would this affect Parliament moving forward?
No, and that is why I slightly disagree with Raymond and when they say, "Oh, this is much ado about nothing." Who is the majority has consequences because those Supreme Court nominees are now within the precinct of Parliament. The executive has discharged their mandate. They've reformed the Speaker. So tomorrow, the NDC side, if indeed they believe they might, can constitute the appointments committee, vet them, take it to the plenary, debate and reject it. Well, why is he looking at me like they can't do that? But
Raymond, you disagree?
It can't disagree because they can do that. Once the executive has written to the Speaker and it has been read to the members, the only thing that remains is for the appointments committee to be constituted. They go there, they vet them, they approve or disapprove. They can do that. And then the e-levy one, they have said they will come, the repeal, they'll be triggered by a private member's motion. And then they would obviously vote on it and repeal it. What I don't know is whether once repealed, that too has to go to the president for us.
It has to go to the president. So this is it. You can have, so when Parliament goes through a bill, and after the third reading, it becomes an act. So at the end of the third reading, you hear an act to so and so. It doesn't become law until the president assents to it. It is the reading. So if they
does that apply to a bill that has been repealed?
But who's going to repeal the bill? So
that's my point I'm making. They will start the process.
So this is the law.
So ordinarily, the Attorney General would have come, would have initiated the process.
So you see.
But they will use the private members route to get the